So if we go to the block voicing assignment first, it says, please create a block voicing with at least 3 notes below the melody pitch. So that one should be pretty easy. We look at the chord symbol, and then we're going to fill in the planes underneath that melody note. Now remember, block voicings look a lot like triad stacks, right? Because we're trying to keep all the notes as close together as possible. So in a C major chord, what would this note be? Which plane do you think this would take up? I'm hearing a lot of different answers. So let's go through each answer one at a time. Why is it not the root plane? Right. What is the magic bass? Right. The root is not part of the voicing. That's the note on the bottom. This is a note in the voicing, so it's not the root. Right. It's the octave, okay? So then I heard somebody say 5. Why is it not 5? The 5 plane, is the octave in the 5 plane? No, it's not. Okay. So I heard 7 plane. Is that a right answer? Yes, there can be. So yes, that actually is a right answer. What's the other right answer? There's a second right answer here. The 9 plane, right. Because does this chord ask for a 7th? No. Does it ask for a 9th? So guess what? The 9 plane and the 7 plane have the same note in it. They have the octave. Because it doesn't ask for a 9 and it doesn't ask for a 7, so we shouldn't add them. So guess what? The only thing that can be in those planes is the octave. So what 2 planes are missing? We've used up the 7 plane and the 9 plane. What are the 2 that are missing? 3 and 5. What would be in the 3 plane of a C major chord? E. Cool. So that means we would go down and we would grab our little tool here. I'm going to just zoom in so I can draw more legibly. And then we would add an E. Oops, that is a line tool. That is not going to work. We would add an E here. Whoop. And what would be in the 5 plane of this? G, right? It's the perfect fifth of C, C, D, E, F, G. Boop. So that would be the answer to this question. I have satisfied all 4 planes of the chord, and I have made a block because they're all close together. Now, the thing to note here is, look what it says. Please create a block voicing with at least 3 notes below the melody pitch. Because some of you might think, oh, well, I could go C, E, G. But that would be the wrong answer because now C is on the bottom of the voicing. So we ask for it to be on the top. Oftentimes, block voicings as habit are done from the top down. Okay? So now, if we look at this A minor chord, what note is this? C, which is what in an A minor chord? The third. It's the minor third. That is correct. So what plane is that note? The third plane. Cool. What planes are missing? 5th and 7th, and what's the other one that's missing? The 9 plane. Cool. This is a triad, right? It doesn't say 7. So what is both in the 9 plane and the 7 plane? Octave. Bam. What plane is still missing? Well, E is not a plane. The 5th, which is an E. So let's do a hard one. G minor 11. Bam. Okay? Before we go to make the voicing, let's figure out what's in each plane. What would be in the 3 plane of a G minor 11? It is the third. What kind of third? And why do we need a minor third? Because it says minor, right. And I'm just going to put flat 3 here, just because I'm drawing with a mouse. So that's what's in the 3 plane, is the minor third. Okay? What would be in the 5 plane of this chord? And I'm not necessarily looking for you to tell me the name of a note.
The 11.
The 11. Why the 11? Yes, and yes, it says so. And the 11 comes from the 5 plane. So both of those things are true. So that's the note we're looking for. We need an 11. Okay? Period. Do we have a perfect fifth in this voicing? The 11th takes up the 5 plane. We don't need 2 notes from the 5 plane, so why would we add another note arbitrarily? The 5 plane is taken up. So we leave that note out. Okay?
So wait, if you still wanted a perfect fifth, would you just in parentheses say add 5? Or how would you change that voice?
So the answer to your question is, if you desperately wanted to add notes, you're going to start going into a new technique, and you're now kind of venturing into a more complex voicing technique, because you are now insisting upon a very certain, because you can't just cram the D anywhere you want. And so now you're into a much more complicated thing. I think the simple answer is you just don't.
Good enough. Okay.
That is really the more, like 9 times out of 10, that's actually the correct answer. Because adding that perfect fifth would be another whole like compositional technique. So it's like a layer on top of a layer.
It probably wouldn't sound good.
Well, yeah, it's more complicated than saying, oh, you just put it here. No. All right, now, what's in the 7 plane? The dominant 7th. Thank you. Right. It's a dominant 7th. Because remember, a minor 7th is a chord, which is a minor triad with a dominant 7th. See what I mean? That's why when you say minor 7th, you confuse people, because there's a whole chord called that. All right, cool. What is in the 9 plane of this chord? A is the optional answer, but there's a more correct answer that I'd like you to think of first. Let me ask you a question. Does that chord symbol say 9 anywhere? So why would we add a 9th? But what would we put in there instead? What did we put on this A minor 7 in the 9 plane? The octave. That's really the default answer, is the octave, because the chord does not ask for a 9th. Okay? Now, again, in performance practice, some people will add the octave or the 9th for fun, for color, for all these other reasons. But it's not required, and it's not necessarily always the right answer. It will always be correct to put an octave on this chord because it doesn't ask for a 9th, but the octave is an acceptable answer. But sometimes, depending on everything else around it, the 9th might be the wrong answer. Does that make sense? So we don't want to add notes just willy-nilly. Oh, just, we want to be literal, okay? So now, to build our voicing, we need to add these 4 planes. This one here is the 3rd plane, right? The minor 3rd. Okay? So then, the next plane down from that is going to be the octave, which is going to be our G. Okay? Right? G chord, octave. Then we need a dominant 7th, which many people already said is an F. There's our F. And notice, please, when the notes are spaced and lined next to each other, they have to be on opposite sides of the stem. Okay? And then finally, we need the 11th, which is a C, which is our 5 plane. And that's C to B flat, which is under an octave. So there's our block. Does that make sense? Okay, so again, you're going to go through and you're going to go plane by plane, fill up the notes, and I encourage you when you do this first step, again, remember these are the planes and these are the notes. I encourage you to think about them in terms of their numbers first. Don't just automatically convert it into note names, because you want to get used to seeing C minor 11 and think, I need to find the 11th. And then you look at the root of the chord and turn that into an 11, right? Because if you just keep saying, oh, it has a C, well, what happens if it was an F sharp minor 11? What's the 11 that time? And see what I'm saying? So we always want to think numbers as often as we can. Our last step always is turning numbers into letters. Because numbers are universal, right? There's only one number 7. And that's it, right? But then when we translate that into letters, now it's a 1 in 12 chance of getting it right. Actually, I take that back. It's a 1 in 36 chance, because there's both F, F sharp, and F flat. And then if you add in the double flats and double sharps, it gets worse. So you see what I'm saying? So we always do numbers first, and then we convert. Okay, so let's look at question 2 now. Question 2 says, please notate the following chords in a block voicing that has a chord tone on the bottom. Okay. Chord tones are defined as roots, thirds, fifths, or sevenths. Okay. Ninths, 11ths, and 13ths are extensions. Alterations are not chord tones. Sharp 9 is not a chord tone, right? Third, fifth, seventh, or a root. And to be clear here, when they say root, it also could be seen as the octave, right? It is the same note. A C of the C chord is a C no matter where you put it, okay? All right? So we look at B flat 9. So to be clear, because it didn't ask for any voice leading, you could be a robot about this. It said the bottom note has to be a chord tone. So you could say, I'm going to put the third on the bottom. What's the third of a B flat 9? D. Bammo. What's the third of a B 13? D sharp. So I've already gotten half of the answer right because I just did that. Because I put a chord tone on the bottom before I even started. You could even be stupendously lazy and go, oh, A minor 7. There's an A. Now, why would that be hard in this and this voicing? Well, actually, more specifically, this one. Because it requires a 9. And is there a octave in a B flat 9 chord in the voicing? Is there an octave? No, because what's in the 9 plane? What's in the 9 plane of a B flat 9 chord? The 9th. What's in the 7 plane?
The 7th, right?
Yeah, there's no octave. We used up the 2 planes where the octave could be. So there's no octave in this chord. So you couldn't put the octave on the bottom because it's not there. You see what I'm saying? So that's why you got to go through and you got to fill up your planes and you got to use your numbers and then convert it. These voicings are third on the bottom because guess what? Guess what 2 notes are in every single chord you're going to make on this page? Not the 5th. There you go. There's going to be a 3rd plane and a 7 plane in every single chord. So if I put whatever's in the 3rd plane and whatever's in the 7th plane on the bottom, I'd get every single answer right. See what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Yep. Yep, you gotta have it because how do you know it's a major chord? The major third. How do you know it's a minor chord? The minor third. If you take those notes away, guess what? It is not just, oh, well, you know, but no, it is not a major chord unless that note is there. It is not a minor chord unless that note is there. You can take the 5th out because there is a perfect 5th in a whole bunch of different chords. And so that note doesn't tell us anything, right? You can't take the 7th off the chord because if you do, then I don't know what it is. You can't have a dominant 7th unless there's a dominant 7th. You can't have a major 7th unless there's a major 7th. Does that make sense? That's why they're required because they fundamentally change the chord and it's, in air quotes, a wrong answer unless. The 7th is actually, so just like with the major and the minor, the 7th is function.
Okay.
Dominant chords are 5 chords of things. They want to go to 1 chords. So when you see dominant chords in music, they are pulling us towards something. Major 7th chords are tonic chords. They're restful. And so those chords are what got resolved to. They're home base. And so just like major and minor tell us about what the tonality is, because that's what triads tell us. Oh, you want a minor song? Well, you need minor triad. You want it to be major? You need major triad. You see what I'm saying? And then the 7th tell us about the function. Like, what is this chord doing here? Is it acting as a dominant or is it acting as a tonic? And that, again, that's the other reason why those planes are crucial, is because without them, if you just wrote C and G next to each other, is it a 4 or is it a 1? We don't know. But if you start putting on these extra little things, you're doing a little detective work. Everybody good with that question too? Does that make sense? Again, I cannot stress to you enough when you rewatch this video, please, 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 use the required plates on the bottom. It will make it so easy because then you can't screw it up. But if you put a root on the bottom, some of these chords don't have roots because the voicing doesn't have an octave in it. So, all right, now number 3 says, please correct the following block voicings. Block voicings should consist of the following elements. There should not be a major or minor second between the top 2 voices. The notes of the block should be less than an octave between the lowest and highest pitch. A block should typically be 3 to 4 notes. Remember, the root is not required in a block. So basically, you're going to look at this block. What's the problem with this block? So can you have seconds on the top of block? No, that's the problem with the voicing. How do you fix this? Right, you invert it. Which note needs to move? The top note, correct. Why can't I move any other note? That's part of the answer. But remember, what is a block voicing most accurately? What's the limit on how far apart the notes can be? An octave. If you took the C and moved it down an octave, C to a D, like this C down here to this D, is that greater than an octave? Yep, so that's why you can't move that note. So you got to take the top note and put it on the bottom.
Couldn't you move the F up an octave?
Oh, yep, and you could do that. So I'll give you that one. So that would be another right answer, because that would also solve the problem, because then the step would be in the middle. Does that make sense to everybody? So I could have also gone A flat, C, D, and an F on the top. And there's more than one right answer to all of these things. Does that make sense? The second one, what's the problem with this one? Yep, you got a second on the top again. Got to move a note. All right, what's the problem with this one? More than an octave. D to F, that's bigger than an octave. So what do? We grab one of the notes and we move it down an octave, and bam, the block is fixed. Okay?
So if you take that F and drop it down to the...
That would fix it.
Okay.
If you took the D and flipped it up an octave, that would also fix it. You see what I'm saying? This one's really quickly. I mean, let's face it, it's really quick to fix blocks, right? You're either too wide or you got a second on the top. Like there's just not a lot, because you see that 3 to 4 notes. All these have 4 notes, so well, that took care of number 3. So you got a 50-50 shot, right? Like, I mean, I don't mean to like belittle my assignment here, but it is that straightforward, okay? And it's really because 9 times out of 10 when people do an incorrect block, it's for one of those 2 reasons. There's either a second on the top or the spread's too big. Done. Does that make sense?